Let's be honest about something most people avoid admitting. You've lost arguments you were absolutely right in. Not because your logic failed, not because your position was weak, but because the other person took control of the emotional frame. They spoke louder, they interrupted faster, they pushed harder. And while you were trying to be reasonable, they were trying to dominate. That's how you ended up walking away frustrated, replaying the conversation in your head, thinking about what you should have said differently. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The world doesn't reward correctness. It rewards control. The person who controls the emotional temperature controls the outcome. That's why calm, intelligent people are often talked over, dismissed, or steamrolled. Today, you're not learning how to argue better. You're learning how to shut down manipulation entirely. 5 responses. No shouting, no explaining, no chasing validation. When used correctly, these responses don't escalate conflict. They end it. And once you understand them, arguments stop feeling chaotic and start feeling predictable. Response 1. I don't need to raise my voice to be right. When someone raises their voice in an argument, it's rarely a display of strength. It's a signal of internal pressure. Loudness is what happens when certainty collapses and emotion rushes in to compensate. People get louder when they feel unheard, threatened, or insecure about their position. The mistake most people make is assuming volume equals authority. It doesn't. Volume is noise. Authority is control. And control never shouts. Society conditions us to misunderstand this. From childhood, we're taught that the loudest person is the most confident, the most dominant, the most important. In reality, loudness is often a stress response. It's the nervous system trying to overwhelm instead of persuade. When you match that energy, you don't neutralize it. You legitimize it. You accept the rules of a game designed to favor emotional instability. Picture a real scenario. A meeting where someone cuts you off mid-sentence. A family argument where one person raises their voice to shut everyone else down. A conversation where the other person keeps escalating, hoping you'll either explode or retreat. When you calmly say, I don't need to raise my voice to be right, something subtle but powerful happens. You refuse to compete on volume. You expose that volume was never necessary in the first place. Epictetus warned that the person who cannot govern their speech becomes governed by their emotions. This sentence embodies that principle without preaching it. You're not accusing, you're demonstrating. You show that clarity doesn't require noise. Confidence doesn't require aggression. The moment you say it calmly, the emotional frame shifts. If the other person keeps shouting, they look unhinged. If they lower their voice, they've already adjusted to your standard. Either way, you win control. Silence often follows because escalation no longer works. Response 2. The way you're speaking tells me more than your argument. Not all confrontations are about ideas. Many are about provoking a reaction. Sarcasm, mockery, dismissive tone, and subtle contempt are tools designed to destabilize you emotionally. The goal is not to win through logic, but to push you into reacting. Once you react, you become predictable. And predictability is leverage. Most people respond to these tactics by defending their position harder. They explain more. They justify more. They argue more. That's exactly what the manipulator wants. This response does the opposite. The way you're speaking tells me more than your argument, removes the spotlight from the content, and places it squarely on behavior. You stop being the one evaluated. You become the one evaluating. This creates an immediate psychological disruption. The other person expects resistance. They expect emotional engagement. What they don't expect is detachment. This sentence functions like a mirror. It reflects their tone back to them without insult or aggression. They are suddenly forced to hear themselves. That moment of self-awareness is deeply uncomfortable for people who rely on emotional pressure. Marcus Aurelius understood this well. He wrote that irrational behavior doesn't need to be attacked. It collapses when it's observed without reaction. This response does exactly that. You don't fight the chaos. You let it expose itself. The manipulator now faces a dilemma. Adjust their tone or continue and look increasingly unstable. Momentum dies here. Emotional pressure requires movement, speed, and intensity. This sentence introduces pause. Pause creates doubt. Doubt kills dominance. Silence often follows because the other person no longer knows which move will give them control. And when control is uncertain, most people stop pushing. Response 3. We can continue when you're able to speak respectfully. One of the most dangerous assumptions people make in conversations is believing that everyone is entitled to their time, attention, and emotional energy. They're not. Many manipulative individuals operate on the belief that persistence equals permission. If they keep pushing, interrupting, or escalating, you'll eventually comply just to end the discomfort. This sentence destroys that assumption instantly. We can continue when you're able to speak respectfully is not a retreat. It's a line drawn in concrete. You're not rejecting the conversation itself. You're rejecting the conditions under which it's happening. That distinction matters. It reframes the entire interaction. The topic becomes irrelevant. What matters now is access. Who gets to speak to you and under what standards? Psychologically, this is destabilizing. Manipulators thrive in chaos. They rely on speed, pressure, and emotional imbalance. When you introduce a condition, you slow everything down. You force structure into a space where they depended on disorder. Suddenly, they're no longer in control of the pace or tone. You are. Strong people set standards. Weak people explain themselves endlessly. This response contains no explanation, no emotional charge, no negotiation. It simply establishes a requirement. Stoic philosophy teaches that tolerance is a choice, not an obligation. By using this sentence, you make that choice visible. You show that respect is the entry fee to your attention. Silence often follows because the other person has limited options. They can adjust their behavior and accept your frame, or they can walk away and lose access. What they cannot do is continue as before. That loss of options feels like loss of control. And when control disappears, pressure tactics fail. Response 4. I'm not continuing this conversation. Some conversations are not meant to resolve anything. Their purpose is erosion. They drain your energy through repetition, emotional baiting, and endless circular logic. The other person doesn't want clarity. They want exhaustion. They want you tired enough to give in or angry enough to lose composure. This sentence ends that strategy immediately. I'm not continuing this conversation works because it contains nothing to attack. There is no justification to dismantle, no reasoning to twist, no emotion to hook into. It is final without being dramatic, calm without being passive. This is why it feels threatening to people who rely on control through engagement. Marcus Aurelius spoke often about choosing where to invest one's energy. Power is not only about action, it's about withdrawal. When you disengage without anger, you remove the battlefield entirely. The other person may attempt a final escalation, but without your participation, it collapses quickly. This response often triggers panic. The manipulator realizes they've lost access to the resource they were exploiting, your attention. They may accuse you of avoidance or weakness. That accusation is projection. What they're actually experiencing is loss of leverage. Silence follows because there is nothing left to push against. Ending a conversation on your terms, without apology or explanation, is one of the clearest demonstrations of dominance in social dynamics. You are not defeated. You are unavailable. Response 5. That's your opinion. I don't share it. This sentence looks harmless. That's what makes it so effective. That's your opinion. I don't share it. There is no argument embedded here, no evidence offered, no emotional signal. It acknowledges the other person without validating their position or opposing it. For controlling personalities, this is deeply frustrating. Control-oriented individuals need movement. They need you to argue, defend, explain, or resist. That movement gives them something to work with. This sentence gives them nothing. Seneca warned that living according to the judgments of others is the worst kind of captivity. This response breaks that captivity cleanly. One by one, every argumentative door closes. They can't debate facts because none were presented. They can't accuse you of disrespect because you were polite. They can't escalate without revealing insecurity. What remains is your position, standing untouched. That emotional independence is intolerable to people who rely on influence to feel powerful. Over time, something interesting happens. When people realize they cannot move you, they stop trying. Pressure turns into caution. Manipulation turns into restraint. Respect often follows, not because they agree with you, but because resistance no longer works. Silence here is not confusion. It's acceptance of limits. This is why people stop pushing you. These 5 responses are not about being calm for the sake of peace. They are about control. They are about refusing to participate in emotional games designed to dominate, exhaust, or manipulate you. When you use them consistently, people hesitate before interrupting you. They lower their voice. They choose their words more carefully. Not because you became aggressive, but because you became unavailable for exploitation. You stopped giving free access to your attention and your emotions. This is the philosophy we teach here at Stoic Horology. Not silence as weakness, but silence as leverage. Not calm as submission, but calm as authority. If you want more strategies like this, subscribe and turn on notifications. Stoic Horology is for people who refuse to be talked over, pressured, or controlled. And tell me in the comments which one of these responses you're going to use first.